Very big day for football fans, soccer fans, on tap in sports for beginners and on the ice and behind the benches. Spoiler alert, this episode of season 4 of Sports for Beginners covers a little bit of that and has a special presentation, a special conversation that myself and first ever host of Locked On Kraken, founder of Black Rosie Media, had this past Wednesday, last Wednesday to be exact. Welcome to episode number 30 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, and it begins now. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sports for Beginners, the podcast, episode number 30 of season 4. Before we get down to the main two-part interview from last week, that is, when I spoke with Erica Lindsay Ayala of Black Rosie Media, I wanted to shed some light on some breaking news. First of all, this is the second PWHL Kickoff installment, but it's run a little bit differently with a mix of FIFA World Cup, Road to 2026 FIFA World Cup, and of course, we are going to talk about some breaking news. We begin with some breaking news that broke on Thursday. Darius Slay claimed off waivers by the Buffalo Bills. His agent revealed on X, according to Adam Schefter, that he is honored the Buffalo Bills decided to pick him up. However, he wanted to take some time away from football and will have a decision in the next few days whether or not he wants to continue playing football or has decided to call it a career. After being a healthy scratch in the Week 13 contest between the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers released Darius Slay, and per Adam Schefter's comment that showed what happened with Darius Slay, it was reviewed by Adam Schefter that Darius Slay, who was placed on waivers, has said he wanted to get back home, enjoy a little bit of time with his family, and also figure out what's next for him. So when it comes to Darius Slay, who the Buffalo Bills acquired on Thursday, not much is known other than the fact that Darius is considering retirement. Adam Schefter's quote, breaking veteran cornerback Darius Slay, whom the Buffalo Bills claimed on waivers Thursday, is unsure if he wants to continue playing and will not be reporting to Buffalo, but he is going to take some time away from football right now and decide in the next few days if he wants to keep playing. First of all, I don't discuss this much, especially not on Bills postgame, but on some of the Bills stuff that I talk about when I have Ryan Talbot on. We talk about Buffalo defense. We talked about the offense, and I'm sure Ryan, Matt, they talk about it on Shout. I'm sure Joe does as well on all of his Locked On podcasts. I don't know how much he talks about it on First Read, but I guarantee you he does talk about it on Locked On Bills. Maybe not too much on Locked On NFL Scouting, but we will see. Locked On NFL Scouting, but we will see. Most recently, we also know that the Eagles have put in a claim, and you have to wonder if this was the plan. Although Darius Slay was claimed off waivers by the Buffalo Bills from the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday, Tom Pelissero also mentioned that he has informed the Bills he is contemplating retirement and will not report after being claimed off waivers per sources. He was cut by the Steelers and is 34 years old on Tuesday. Buffalo retains his rights for now in case Slay changes his mind. So right now, Bills Mafia, we have the rights to Darius Slay in case Slay changes his mind and does decide to report to Buffalo, since we claimed him off waivers. However, what we don't know yet to be official, if he is retiring an Eagle, retiring from football, and where he's going to wind up, we don't know that. All we know to this point is the fact that Darius was given an opportunity by Buffalo and he said, "You know what? I need some time to think about it and I will not be reporting to Buffalo." Now, Thad Brown brought up something 14 hours ago, so yesterday obviously, saying Darius Slay had plenty of nice things to say about the Bills and Josh Allen, but not the Buffalo weather. He's talked to the team, I should say. It was respectful. He feels he's too old to move to a new city. He said, quote, on Speak Easy when he was being interviewed on the podcast or the show Speak Easy, "It wasn't a bad fit. They just caught me at a bad time." Bill's head coach on the matter, per Joe Buscala, said Darius Slay, obviously the situation didn't go the way you guys might have wanted it to. Trying to upgrade, but also losing out on a player has to be pretty tough timing, a pretty tough timing thing this time of year. McDermott answered, that was a question from one of the reporters. McDermott answered, "Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that that unfolded and went down the way it did. You know, I'm a huge Jamarcus Ingram fan, and I will and will always be. So I'm always going to be in his corner and want the best for him. So that's really where my mind is right now. And you know, I'm getting myself ready to coach this game." McDermott was also asked, "So are you still open to Darius playing here? Are there conversations still being had?" And McDermott said, "I'm really going to focus on our team right now. So focus on our team and coaching this game in a couple of days here. And I wish him the best, him and his family." There was another question in this quote here for McDermott, which he replied, yeah, yep, sure, for sure." The question was, "I assume you were hoping to get Jamarcus Ingram or Jamarcus back after you guys had let him go." And he said, yeah, yep, sure, for sure." That's what Sean McDermott said after that. So again, first of all, for Darius Slay, take all the time you need, my friend. Take all the time you need. If you need to discuss whether or not you're going to continue playing football and whether that is with the Bills or it's one last go with the Eagles in Philadelphia, all power to you, my friend. You decide when you feel is time. And if you want to play with Buffalo, great. What I've said to people who think that Buffalo is never going to win a Super Bowl. Good things come to those who wait. So instead of saying Buffalo is never going to win a Super Bowl or the Raiders, they're never going to win a Super Bowl or whatever the case may be, I don't care what it is that you say. Good things come to those who wait. And with that said, for Darius Slay, whether he does retire, whether he does retire or not, remains to be the question. And we will see where it goes. All right, time now to go to some other breaking news. FIFA World Cup 2026 is coming up. And we have a look here at the group stage. I'm looking at it right now on my phone as we speak from Sportsnet. It is a combination of groups, and they are as follow. From Group A to Group L, you have in Group A, you will have in that group, host city will be Mexico. On the other end, you have South Africa, South Korea, and a playoff matchup to be determined that we will know about momentarily from Playoff D in the FIFA World Cup, or in the FIFA Cup qualifying playoff, I should say. In Playoff A, they will face Canada in Canada's opening matchup as they open up the Group B. Also in Group B, are Qatar and Switzerland. In Group C, the Group C playoff has been moved to Group D, along with the US, Paraguay, and Australia countries playing in that group. In Group C, we have Brazil, Morocco, Haiti, and Scotland. Over in Group E, say hello to Germany, Ecuador, Cote d'Ivoire, and there are two. Over in Group F, we have the Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. Playoff B will face Tunisia or either the Netherlands or Japan, but definitely Tunisia, whoever winds up winning that playoff before the World Cup kicks off next summer in Group F. Playoff 1 is in Group K. In Group G, we have Belgium, Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand. Group H, we have Cabo Verde, Saudi Arabia, Uruguay, and Spain. England is in Group L along with Guyana, Panama, and Croatia. In Group J, say hello to Argentina, Algeria, Austria, and Jordan. France and Senegal and Norway round out Group I, along with the second playoff moving into that group. And there is the group stage of the 48 teams. So whoever winds up in any of those spots from the UFA playoff, they will slot in to the 2026 FIFA World Cup coming soon. Also want to issue congratulations, I should say, to the one, the only. Congratulations to Sportsnet's own Hazel May, who won the 2025 Jack Garnet Award presented by the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame to a member of the media who has made significant contributions to the game of baseball in Canada. Hazel, congratulations on winning the award. Well deserved. And what a day it would have been for you. Also, we have found out in MLB news the Blue Jays have made another signing besides Dylan Cease. They have gone after Japanese KOB Player of the Year, or MVP, I should say, in that season. Used to play in his one stint in the major leagues. He used to play for the Pittsburgh Pirates, is now playing for the Toronto Blue Jays in his next stint as a Major League Baseball player. In the KOBC 2025 season, he had a record of 17 in the KBO season, I should say 2025. That makes more sense. He had a record of 17 wins and 1 loss. Pitched 180.2 innings, has an ERA under 1.89, was the KOB MVP, registering 2. Also down on the court. Let's go courtside for a little bit. Now, these are some stuff I'm reading from 2 days ago from posts posted on Sportsnet. But anyways, it was revealed eventually that the Clippers have announced overnight on a Wednesday night that they were parting ways with Chris Paul, who confirmed earlier in the season that he would be retiring after the 2025-26 campaign. After the 2025-2026 campaign, Seamus Charania reports Chris Paul and his leadership style clashed with Clippers sources. The Clippers sources tell ESPN Paul has been vocal in holding management, coaches, and players accountable, which the team felt became disruptive. Specifically, Ty Lue was not on speaking terms with Paul for several weeks. Giannis Antetokounmpo and his agent, Alex S., have started conversations with the Bucks about his future in Milwaukee. A resolution is expected to come in the coming weeks. Also, 2 days ago, before we came on here, of course, this is before Erica and I this is after Erica and I record, I should say. Steven Stamkos became the sixth active player to reach the milestone of 1,200 plus career points in the NHL. In the PWHL, which is where we're going to take our first break of the program. When we come back, we will set up the interview for you, but it should be noted in personal headlines from the PWHL. Although she was able to take part in Toronto's clash with Ottawa last night, head coach of the Ottawa Charge, Carla McLeod, revealed that she is battling cancer, breast cancer. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. A statement from the Charge when this news was revealed reveals from the coach herself. I want to share some personal news. I was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Hearing those words was incredibly difficult, but I want everyone to know that I'm going to be okay. I'm incredibly fortunate to have an exceptional medical team guiding me, and together we've built a treatment plan that gives me tremendous confidence in the road ahead. There are still some variables to be determined as we move forward, but my goal, without question, is to be behind the bench as often as possible. It continues to say, I have the best job on the planet. Coaching the Ottawa Charge and the Czechia women's national team is a privilege I cherish deeply. One of my biggest concerns outside of my own health was the possibility of not being able to fully support the two programs that mean so much to me. I finally exhaled when my medical team assured me that my treatment should have minimal impact, on being present for the Charge season, and that I'll still be able to coach Czechia at the Olympic Winter Games in February. That said, as I begin the treatment phase this week, I will unfortunately have to miss our next game on Tuesday, December 2nd. The FOMO will be real, but I am incredibly lucky to be surrounded by world-class players, coaches, and staff who will keep pushing our group forward. Being with this team fuels me, and I intend to stay as connected as I can during treatment. Thank you in advance for the support and kindness. I know our incredible Ottawa community always shows. It means a lot to me. In statement from the general manager, this was ahead of their game against the Minnesota Frost, which opened up the action on PWHL December action for week number 3 of the PWHL season from December 2nd to December 7th. The statement from the general manager, Mike Hirschfield, says the Charge and League are here to support Carla throughout her treatment. Her strength, resilience, and optimism shine through in the most challenging of circumstances, and we know she'll approach this next chapter with the same determination she brings to everything she does. She has built an incredible coaching staff, including assistant coach Haley Arwin, who will serve as head coach on Tuesday while Carla begins treatment. So this means even though Carla was not able to be present at the game against the Minnesota Frost, which unfortunately the Charge lost 5-1, she was present at the Battle of Ontario and between the benches. She told TSN during the broadcast of the Battle of Ontario, breast cancer doesn't know age, but I'm grateful to be back behind the bench. This is where I'm most comfortable. And even though they lost 3-1, which we will talk about on PWHL recap on our Battle of Ontario, Erica Howe, a teammate of Ottawa and Toronto in the past, dropped the puck on the game night wearing Carla McLeod's Canadian jersey, and it should be noted that Erica Howe has survived breast cancer. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it when you have to deal with something like cancer. Nobody likes that. Let's just be clear. But you got to do what you got to do. So, as the host of Sports for Beginners and, of course, Weekly in Sports and other programs we do here post-game besides Dolphins post-game and sometimes, at times, Blue Jays game recap, I just want to say to Carla, I am with you in the fight. I'll be with you in spirit. I'll be praying for you as you battle breast cancer and try to be as present as you can for the games this regular season, for the Ottawa Charge, as well as into February next year when we begin the Olympic calendar. But I am with you in the fight. I'll be with you in spirit. Prayers to you and your family and those you are associated with to keep things going. And with that said, we're going to take a break. When we come back here on episode 30 of season 4, Erica and my conversation. What did we talk about? Plus, before we get to the two-part conversation, which will lead into a break that will ultimately send us to the end of our show, we'll look at where the standings are in the PWHL thus far. Now, minor note, we spoke with Erica on Wednesday last week, and therefore her interview with me is pre-recorded, and you'll hear that next after we look at the standings in the PWHL, as well as what else has been going on in women's hockey. Have there been any signings? Do we have any special takeover events? Is there any events from last season returning? Find out all about that after this short break. Still to come, my conversation with Erica ahead of this news breaking, what's to come on season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast, and much more, all when we return. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Hey everyone, it's Scott McGregor here. Join me weekly right here on Sports for Beginners for weekly episodes, your weekly dive in around sports news surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays, Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Raptors, and more. We'll have guests on a week-to-week basis, and so much more. Lots of great conversations coming. Be sure to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And with that, make sure to like our Facebook page, Sports for Beginners Podcast 87. Just type that into your browser, and you should be sure to find our Facebook page. We'll also provide bonus content. It's going to be a dull moment you'll never want to miss. Check out Sports for Beginners with me weekly for daily news around the sports league, surrounding my favorite sports teams and yours, and so much more. Until then, we'll see you at action time.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo. Two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Welcome back to episode 30 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. We're down to the final episodes of season 4 with our Christmas finale coming up momentarily. We'll have to see if we can get one to you. Reminder that we have some recap shows coming your way. One will be part of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. That is our Bolts and Lightning. I meant to say our Penguins and Bolts game, because I counted the Lightning twice. I said Bolts and Lightning, but that didn't make any sense. Bolts and the Pens will be episode 31 of season 4. An upcoming episode. Still to come on this episode, my conversation with Erica Lindsay Ayala. We had that last Wednesday, and we're going to set you up for it here on this portion of the show. If this show winds up being 1 hour, that's okay. It's actually good that it is 1 hour for this one, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot that Erica and I get into. Also, I want to mention this is a abbreviated version of our second installment of PWHL Kickoff. A little bit of PWHL. FIFA 2026 World Cup. We talked about Hazel May being awarded the 2025 Jack Garnet Award. We talked about Chris Paul, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Cody Ponce. I forgot to mention his name, but we talked about his record in the KBO season, known as the KBO MVP of that season. We talked about that earlier on. Now let's get to some breaking news. First from around the league, and this news broke on December 4th. This broke yesterday on December 4th, 2025. The PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, announced it. Zandi Cross has been appointed to the newly created role of Vice President of People and Culture for the PWHL. In her new role, Cross will be responsible for leading the PWHL's hostelic people and culture strategy in support of the league's commitment to championing equity, I should say, and excellence. Yeah, there we go. That's what I mean. And excellence in professional women's hockey. Leveraging the PWHL's single entry ownership structure, Cross will develop best-in-class strategies that impact both athletes and staff on and off the ice. Her work will span hockey operations and business operations, fostering an unified, I should say, culture of excellence for the rapidly growing league and its 8 teams. Those are New York, Boston, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Minnesota. And add to that mix Toronto. Nope, I already mentioned Toronto, Vancouver, and Seattle, adding to that mix of the 8 teams. Cross brings more than 30 years of sports industry experience to the PWHL, including nearly 3 decades with the PGA of America, where she held leadership roles across the organization. Her tenure accumulated in 7 years as Chief People Officer, during which she guided the PGA through a headquarters relocation and the pandemic, strengthen talent, attraction, and retention across all demographics, implemented an engagement framework that improved organizational performance and built a workplace culture recognized as best in class by industry peers. Wow, not bad for Zandi Cross. I know I don't run the PWHL, but as a fan of the league, not necessarily of a team, but a fan of the league, welcome to the new role. Hope it treats you well. Over on Scepter's news, besides what's happened with Carla McLeod, which we still await big news on, the battle on Bay Street returns. Yep, that's right. The Toronto Scepters will return to Scotiabank Arena January 17th, 2026 to take on The Professional Women's Hockey League Expansion Club, the Vancouver Golden Eyes. The game at Scotiabank Arena is easily one of the most exciting games of the year, Renata Fast said, who is the alternate captain right now. The energy there the last 2 seasons has been incredible. You feel it through your whole body. Playing in front of 19,000 passionate fans at home is an experience you can't really put into words. I know this game is circled on all of our calendars. The Scepters have played at Scotiabank Arena twice before two sold-out crowds of over 19,000 fans that rank second and third among PWHL all-time attendance records. The first game was against Montreal on February 16th, 2024, last year. To the current year, because we are still currently in 2025, which was a 3-0 shutout win for Toronto with 19,285 fans in attendance. The next time Toronto played at Scotiabank Arena, they beat the New York Sirens on January 25th, 2025, 4-2, in front of an attendance record of 19,102 fans in attendance. The Battle on Bay Street will be the last chance for fans to see the Scepters in Toronto before the PWHL breaks for the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games. Many members of both Toronto and Vancouver are anticipated to represent their countries on the international stage. The matchup game also marks Toronto's first matchup against Vancouver and sees the return of former Scepters player Sarah Nurse. Nursey will be back in town. Hannah Miller, Kristen Campbell, and Izzy Daniel are other notables that will be back in Toronto. If you want tickets to this game, it is important to note that tickets for this special game will be available with pre-sale beginning next Wednesday, December 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by the general on sale on Thursday, December 11th at 10 a.m. Tickets can be purchased at thepwhl.com/tickets. Fans can sign up online for the Toronto Scepters newsletter, the Beacon, for priority access. So it is without question that the Battle on Bay Street returns. Another takeover game that looks interesting. Hey, Garden! Hey, TD Garden! Y'all want some hockey? Well, actually, to be fair, these are not takeover games. But anyways, they are games that are happening this season. Hey, Boston at TD Garden. Do you want some hockey here? Well, good news. The Boston Fleet will host a game at the home of the NHL's Boston Bruins at TD Garden on April 7th, 2025. The Boston Fleet announced today as in December 2nd when the news article broke, so it was a few days ago, that the team will host a home game at TD Garden on April 11th against the Montreal Victoire at 7 p.m. Eastern. Fleet Business Operations Director Laura Maria Davy said, hosting a Fleet game at TD Garden is an exciting milestone for our organization. Playing at such an iconic venue presents an incredible opportunity to showcase the PWHL on one of the biggest stages in sports and to connect with fans from across Greater Boston. Celebrating its 30th anniversary in 2025, TD Garden stands as New England's premier, sports and entertainment arena and one of the most recognized venues in North America. The state-of-the-art facility accommodates 17,850 fans for hockey and is home to two of the region's most storied franchises in the NHL's Boston Bruins and the NBA's Boston Celtics. Over the past 3 decades, TD Garden has hosted thousands of world-class events, including everything from championship playoff runs and major collegiate tournaments to internationally renowned concerts and special events. Collegiate tournaments to international renown concerts and special events. TD Garden, president of TD Garden and COO of the Boston Bruins, said, which is Glenn Thornbrough, said, "We are honored to welcome the PWHL's Boston Fleet to TD Garden for their first game this April. TD Garden is built to give world-class athletes and fans a world-class stage, and we're proud to bring the PWHL on to a platform that delivers the full NHL level experience they deserve. The growth of women's sports is inspiring, and adding women's events to our calendar is something we're energized to champion." Alrighty, I'd say it's about time you hear my conversation with Erica and myself. When we come back, we'll take a look at the standings, where they sit, as we head into action over the weekend between New York and Vancouver, as well as Boston and Minnesota, and Montreal and Toronto, who will be duking battle this weekend. Get a look at the schedule momentarily as well. Let's take you to the interview now. Moments. Take a look at the standings, and then we'll wrap it up from there. This is episode 31 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners. Episode 30, of season 4 of Sports for Beginners. Episode 31 is a Penguins postgame show, and that's coming your way following our coverage of Toronto versus Ottawa. So be sure to stick with us for that. All right, here's my conversation with Erica. It will be a 2-part conversation. I'll be back after the 2-part conversation to wrap it all up with you. Enjoy the conversation. Perhaps we pick up with a couple of things we may not have known since before we spoke to Erica. And with that said, here is the following interview. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another edition of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. With, well, look what the hockey podcast dragged in. It's Erica Ayala of On Kraken. I also forgot to mention that it's not just On Kraken, but in case you're not aware, she also does a show with the wonderful Rachel Donner called The Women's Hockey Report around the PWHL and other areas in women's hockey. Erica is also the founder of Black Rosie Media. Erica, welcome back to the studio. It's been a while since your debut.
Yeah, it has been a while, but thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for all of the content that we have coming over at Black Rosie Media, including, of course, the Seattle Kraken, the PWHL, as you mentioned, and Black Rosie Media, once again, will be headed to the Olympics. So we've got a lot coming up that's really exciting when it comes to women's and men's hockey.
Of course. And speaking of that, I want to take this opportunity before we get into the women's hockey talk. And of course, we're going to talk a little Kraken in a little bit. But I want to let everyone know that our post-game show is back on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, for its 3rd season of coverage, but its 2nd season covering just select games this year. We started off with Montreal and Boston. And up next, we're going to talk Toronto-Boston. That'll be fun. So before we get down to women's hockey talk, Erica, I want to ask you, because the Penguins and the Kraken have just played each other. So what were some of your takeaways from that game?
Yeah, I think overall it was a good game. We saw it go into overtime, and the Seattle Kraken have made a little bit of a reputation for going to overtime games this season. Actually, just on Black Rosie Media, I had Allison Lucan talk about that, break that down. And I think what you saw in that game was just a stellar performance from goaltending that honestly, I wasn't necessarily sure that we would see. I mean, we saw Joey Decord get injured. He came back. Philip Grubauer has been fantastic because that, of course, was a back-to-back game, the first of a back-to-back game on the East Coast for the Seattle Kraken. So I just think that We saw a great performance in net that really kept the team afloat. And I think if we're being critical, what we also have to talk about with regard to the Seattle Kraken is that the offense, we're still looking to see who's going to lead the offense. Jared McCann, former Penguin, Jared McCann, still on IR, injured reserve. So there's definitely a lot to take away from that weekend, but specifically that game in Pittsburgh. And there's a lot that the Kraken still have to do if they want to maintain at the top of the standings in the Pacific Division where they are now.
Yes, and I often don't like to quote the old 2-Niner Phil Borg, who I talk about a lot on my podcast when it comes to the radio network that I listen to. But the Penguins, who did play the Wild on Friday before they played the Kraken, they did not come out, well, they came out to play against Minnesota, but they just couldn't get anything past Philip Gustafson. And honestly, Phil, shout out to you, but you always like to say the big boys came to play, and they definitely did against the Kraken. Yeah, okay, it ends in overtime and in a loss, but it was much better than losing 5-0 to the Wild. It was much better than losing 5-0. Anyways, so the PWHL has returned, and we had a couple of great games. I did catch a little bit of the opening game between Vancouver and Seattle. But first, let's talk about opening night. Minnesota and Toronto. Obviously, for the Frost, it's a big night for them. It's their home opener, but it's also the first night of the year in year number 3. It's also the second year in a row they're raising a banner. So let's talk about the banner raising first before we get to the game. And I did see all of this, by the way. What were some of your takeaways from the banner raising?
Well, I was here in Seattle, so I actually didn't catch the banner raising ceremonies. I was getting ready for the evening game and doing some conversation elsewhere, so I didn't get to see the full ceremony. What I will say is that earlier, I guess really in October, I was able to spend some time with Kendall Coyne Schofield, who of course it is expected to represent Team USA in the upcoming Olympics. And we talked a little bit about that Minnesota team. I've also talked to Lee Steckline in the past about this Minnesota Frost squad. And I think that what stands out to me as told by the players is that, you know, this was a little bit of a different squad. They still had to show some tenacity to be able to get the win, the championship win. And anytime you can raise a banner, that's super special. I think it's also interesting that this season there will be kind of commemorative patches that the Minnesota Frost will wear eventually. I don't think that we're ready for the opening game if memory serves, but it's always special when you have a banner raising ceremony, when you get the championship rings. Of course, with expansion, we know that some players are elsewhere now, including Sophie Jakes as an example. But Denisa Grishova comes back because of a trade just before the rosters were locked. So I know that Frost fans are super excited about that. So I was a little bummed I didn't get to see the ceremony. So I have to lean on you for that analysis because, again, there was another game out here. I'm right now in the Pacific Northwest that caught my attention.
Yes, yes. So, anyways, yes, I did see the whole game right from the get-go. First of all, nice start by former Siren Ella Shelton in her, I guess now hometown, playing for Toronto, which I didn't actually expect that to happen, but she scores for Toronto to open up the scoring. Okay, technically Kendall Coyne opened the scoring, but Ella opens the scoring for Toronto.
Yes.
That was nothing really new to me, but as far as the banner is concerned, I thought it was a really nice gesture. But as you mentioned, some players like Sophie Jakes are not with the team anymore. And you also mentioned Denise K, as I call her. It's kind of hard for me to say her name, so I try to go as short form as I can. So I apologize for that. But anyways, she was in a trade that broke out right before the rosters, as you mentioned, were locked. And immediately I started thinking to myself, I was like, oh man, I got to try to get someone who likes talking women's hockey on with me to talk about that trade, because I did not expect that right before the game dropped the puck. I did not expect the trade right before game 1.
Yeah, well, it was the trade happened, I think maybe the Thursday or so before the rosters were locked. And, Krishova was one of the players that Frost fans really reacted to losing in expansion. She was taken by Vancouver. But, you know, I think that, again, anytime you can bring back someone like Denisa Krishova, who I just think has, throughout her professional career, shown what she can do offensively, you can bring that back into the mix. That's going to be huge. And so I think it was a really good move for the Minnesota Frost, who, again, are looking to defend their title, are the reigning champions right now. Can they maintain, you know, that top spot? We'll see, because they've had rocky seasons to start before. I think what's interesting here is, what is Vancouver getting in Anna Szigeti, who was the forward that was sent from Minnesota to Vancouver? Denisa Krishova, in my estimation, is still a pretty well-known name in the PWHL. So for Szigeti to go to Vancouver, you know, I don't know yet, if we're being honest, if we can really assess and evaluate trades in ways that we might be more familiar with in sports overall, such as the WNBA or even the NWSL, because this is, again, a veteran for a rookie. So what was it that Vancouver wanted or needed in their roster? Or was this a little bit more of an exchange that was, as I sometimes say, team friendly or player friendly? I don't know yet. We haven't heard anything specific to that. I thought it was interesting, speaking of that second game of the opening night, the Vancouver did play. They hosted Seattle, the Seattle Torrent, but Szigeti did not dress. So again, a pretty top ticket trade here. You know, sometimes people will be like, well, who got fleeced here? You know, or, and put it another way, what team benefits most from this trade? Without knowing Szigeti's game very well, she's a true rookie, and noting that she was a healthy scratch for the home opener. As of right now, you think that this trade 100% benefits Minnesota. I'm very curious to see, however, if down the road, if we get to see Anna Szigeti and what she can do for this Vancouver team.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So I'm gonna try to pay as much attention to when the Frost and the Golden Eyes, as they are called for Vancouver, when they do get out for the first time. I'm gonna try to keep a close eye on that, especially for the lineups. Yes, I'm kind of gonna be keeping an eye on that trade when Minnesota and Vancouver do clash. Yeah, we'll see who it benefits. The other action from the weekend was Sirens, who not just defeated, but they scored 4 goals unanswered in Saturday's contest against the Ottawa Charge. And before we talk about Montreal and Boston, since we're talking Sirens now, which game do you think was better? Tuesday night against Montreal or Saturday against Ottawa? Because to me, I think it was by far Saturday. Ottawa just wasn't able to get by New York and Kaylee Osborne. And then you flash forward to yesterday, Tuesday, and it was like, where is that same competitiveness against Montreal? Like, where is that same competitiveness that you had against Ottawa?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. I first want to start with the game against Ottawa, because I want to shout out Taylor Girard. She had a hat trick in that game. And for people who maybe are surprised, because Taylor Girard has been traded, she was traded to New York, didn't get a lot of minutes, I think fourth line minutes, and was on the penalty kill for the Sirens. For those who know Taylor Girard, when she's a true rookie in the PHF for the Connecticut Whale, she is a special teams expert, but I would say on the power play. And so I've been waiting for the Sirens to really open up her game here. And you saw that in the first game. I think, to your question overall, this is the question that I've honestly had with the Sirens, because I think that there's been a lot of talent, including Abby Rock, who recently played against her former team, and we saw what she was able to do. But I just never really saw how all of the talent was being pulled together, specifically through the systems and the coaching, and maybe even some of the visionary work of the front office. So I've always had a lot of questions about the Sirens. They have made some personnel changes in the first 2 seasons to maybe help mitigate some of that. They made a lot of moves in the draft to stock up on young talent. And I think, to me, that's perhaps what we're seeing when it comes to the night and day, is that they're a very young team. And some of these players are going to be given opportunities that they just didn't have in the first season, maybe season and a half, 2 seasons, depending on the player. But Taylor Gerard is definitely someone who can score. She has an absolute scoring touch, a power forward. She's not one of the taller players or she's not the tallest or among the tallest players in the PWHL, but she definitely has size that she can utilize to her advantage, height, size that she can utilize to her advantage. And I'm hoping that we get to see more of that. But that's my assessment early on of the Sirens. But you also alluded to goaltending, and with Corrine Schroeder, of course, and Abby Levy moving on, is this an opportunity for other goaltenders? I think that's really going to be the name of the game when it comes to the league overall, which, of course, going back to that Ottawa game, I think, in the Ottawa game, the charge, they have no more Aneta Taralova among other players, but, they are a team that really had trouble defensively. They can score in bunches, we know, but the defensive discipline has sometimes missing, and it's early returns, but it did seem like Gwyneth Phillips was left out to dry a handful of times. Some of those Sirens shots were second, third opportunities right in front of the net, and you have to be able to, close things out. And they just didn't. So that's something that Ottawa's going to have to fix.
Yes, they definitely are. And they obviously have yet to play this week. Actually, are they playing this week? I don't think they are. Let's see. Oh, no, they open up December. Their next game is against Minnesota in December. Ottawa will also play Vancouver this month. So they will play one more game in November. They will play tonight, actually, as we are recording this. They will play tonight against Vancouver. Now, the only thing I have on that is it's not your home opener. So New York kind of spoiled that, but now you have a chance to beat a team who's the new kids on the block, and one of the new kids on the block rather, and you have to do that at home. And as we saw in overtime in the Pacific Northwest, when it came to the Torrent and the Golden Eyes, we saw the first game of that series between Golden Eyes and the Torrent. We saw it go to overtime, and ultimately, the Torrent weren't able to, as you said, finish and in turn play spoiler against Vancouver in their inaugural season opener.
Well, I've gone on record multiple times saying that Vancouver is probably my favorite team on paper. I have really respected what Cara Morey has done with Vancouver, but even going back to her Princeton days, I think she's one of the great hockey minds that I've had a chance to grow with. I think the Princeton organization, is so interesting. Their women's hockey program, of course, Sarah Fillier coming from that program. And around the time that Fillier was there, we also had the COVID interruptions, and being an Ivy League school, I think that Ivy League schools, because of decisions that were made at the academic and athletic level, their sports were impacted differently than other leagues that tried to really get back to play. I'm not going to litigate, especially all these years later, if I thought that was a good or bad decision. It's the decision that was made. And I at the time was completely supportive and understand it. And I think that I would have loved to see that Princeton team, as they were coming up, go against Ohio State, who we've seen now become a powerhouse in women's college hockey in the United States. I just have to give a shout out to Cara Morey. If you know how the Ohio State University plays hockey, then yeah, Princeton had some of that edge too. Again, disrupted because of COVID, and they're trying to get back on track. But anyway, to go back to Vancouver, Sarah Nurse scoring the first ever goal. It was the second goal of the game. Julia Gosling got a brace, as I like to say. Most people know that as a soccer term, but it works for hockey as well. But she scored 2 goals. Julia Gosling got the first goal among the 2 expansion teams, so she'll go down in history, along with one of my favorite ever Seattle Kraken players, Ryan Donato, as the first player to score in franchise history, both the Kraken, Donato, and now Julia Gosling for the Torrent, scoring on the road. So we'll have to see on Friday coming up who joins Vince Dunn as far as Seattle hockey history in the modern era, I should say, as the first Torrent player to score at Climate Pledge Arena in a home game for the Seattle hockey team. Vince Dunn was the first Kraken to score at Climate Pledge Arena. But going back to Vancouver, I mean, we saw Sirens have to break down. Teresa Vanishova is one of my favorite hockey players of right now. She's scrappy. I know a lot of people talk about her penalty minutes. I think it's wild that someone who, again, not the tallest in stature or even, presumably or seemingly looking the strongest, she definitely plays a physical game. She had a beautiful back check in open ice. I believe they were working through the neutral zone and is able to get that puck back, toss it over to Abby Boreen to get the win for Vancouver in overtime. She's known for making spectacular plays in overtime. Toronto 6 fans might have remembered it was Teresa Vanishova who scored the overtime game winner to give the Toronto 6 what was their first franchise in Isabel Cup final and what ended up being the last Isabel Cup championship ever awarded. So I'll always give a shout out to Teresa Vanishova, who had a fantastic game and set up that Boreen goal. We thought that this is a Vancouver team that is going to take advantage of mistakes that their team makes. They play fast. I do think Seattle looked like they were on their back foot. We heard from Steve O'Rourke, head coach of the Seattle Torrent, after the game, saying it was self-inflicted wounds that led to the loss. Some blown assignments, I think defensively. Maybe you want one goal back for Corrine Schroeder, but she was pretty good, really great goaltending overall. Emryn Smashmeyer gets the win. Corrine Schroeder in her first start for Seattle comes up with the overtime loss, but great goaltending in this game. Really a great game. It was just, again, Vancouver, they were relentless in their attack. And I think, again, they took advantage of the mistakes and created turnovers, as I just mentioned with Vanishova. Vancouver's a team to watch for sure. I think they're definitely going to make some waves, so to speak, in the PWHL this season.
Of course. And there's still a lot of season to be played. Now, there was something when I listened to Amy Shear talk on NBC or on CBC or something like that. Something to do with NBC, I believe. But anyways, I saw a clip of getting ready for the season, and I heard Amy Shear mention that when it came to expansion, obviously this season we expanded to Seattle and Vancouver, with the exception of what we now know as not PWHL Seattle and PWHL Vancouver, but Vancouver Golden Eyes and Seattle Torrent. So basically what she mentioned was, and I'll leave a link in our episode description for you to check this out.
My content is exclusively on Black Rosie Media these days. I'm not affiliated any longer.
Well, breaking news. Erica has just confirmed with me that she's not doing Locked On Kraken, but you're still doing the hockey report, right?
No, I am not. I am not with the Locked On Podcast Network at all. All of my hockey content is exclusively on Black Rosie Media.
All right, well, you've heard it here first. On this episode of Sports for Beginners, whatever it is, for this interview, you've heard it here first. Erica has come out and said that she is not with the Locked On Podcast Network. Therefore, she is not running Locked On Kraken, and she is also not doing the Women's Hockey Report, which she was doing prior to us talking. Of course, that is not now the case anymore, but that's something that we could probably get into on another episode if need be. But yes, just to clarify what Erica said, all of her content is exclusively available on Black Rosie Media.
Yes.
All right. So the action of opening weekend is done, but you still got a few games left in the opening month. You got Seattle and Minnesota. They are going head to head on Friday. Vancouver will take on Ottawa at the time we are recording this, which is Wednesday, November 26, 2025. So by the time you hear this on a specific episode of Sports for Beginners or Weekly in Sports, that game most likely will have gone final. But Erica, we also have Vancouver and New York, and then Boston and Toronto. So what are you expecting from Vancouver when they go to take on a team that has now got the player of the week, who, as you mentioned, had a 3-goal game against a hat trick against Ottawa? And of course, Vancouver who has yet to play the Ottawa Charge, and also still yet to play teams like Boston, Toronto. They've already played Seattle, so we can put them out of the mix there. But they got to play Minnesota, and yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I mean they've only had the one game, so they've only taken on one opponent, Vancouver. That is, of course, New York has played 2 games, so they've got a level up there. We still have plenty of matchups that we haven't seen yet. What I'm expecting is a fast-paced game. Again, I think New York is a young team. I think they do want to play fast. I do worry about their discipline at times. I think, again, the night and day that we saw versus Ottawa compared to versus Montreal. And then, of course, we saw that there was a lot of love lost between Montreal and New York there, or really New Jersey. Because anyway, I'm from New York, so I take exception when teams that don't play in New York are called New York. But anyway, I digress. Vancouver is also a fast team. They have veterans that are able to kind of anchor what they're trying to do. And I think that, again, as I've said, Vancouver is a team to watch. Maybe not necessarily to beat yet. They've only played 1 game, and other teams have also collected wins in the season, but definitely are a team to watch. So I'm expecting this is going to be a fast-paced game. The New York Sirens are going to have to really be disciplined in front of their minder. Again, that was something that we saw was a little bit of a bugaboo for Ottawa early in the season against the Sirens. So I think that if New York can be a little bit more defensively sound, and I like their defensive core, they have a good group there led by Zandi Hart, of course, their captain. I think that they can come up with something good here, but they're going to have to be sharp because, as I mentioned already, Vancouver, small sample size, but they can take advantage of mistakes, and that's what makes them lethal.
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. All right. We're coming up to the end of our thing, but a couple of things to get to here. Let's talk about the coaching. Not necessarily the people that are still in the league for PWHL, but the new guys, the new people on the block in coaching, starting with Chris Spar. What did you like from Boston's coach, Chris Spar?
It's still super early. I don't know much about Chris Spar. I'm getting to learn Steve O'Rourke because I'm here in Seattle and I prioritize being here for their training camp. But what I will say is, and I think a lot of people have noticed, that there are some coaches throughout the PWHL that they don't really have women's hockey experience. And that's not necessarily an immediate indictment, but it's definitely something to watch. And I do think it has been an issue for coaches and even GMs in the past that don't know women's hockey having to learn on the fly. I think it's really wild for a head coach to say that they haven't watched film on their players, especially when there are Olympians in the PWHL. There are former pro women's hockey champions, not to mention NCAA champions. There's plenty of film for women's hockey. So those are always things that I'm pretty critical of. Compare that to the head coach, Brian Nadolski, who is, of course, the Vancouver, I almost said Canucks, the Vancouver Golden Eyes head coach. He has women's pro hockey experience, coaching at the Olympic level, coaching with the expansions that we saw at the time in the CWHL, and then went over to the Russian Women's League through the Vanki Rays, which was something that was funded by the Chinese national team ahead of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. So Brian Nadolski and Kara Mori, they know women's hockey and they know the landscape. And I do think that gives them a competitive advantage early in the season. That being said, I've seen Coach O'Rourke and how he organizes his practices. I love some of the drills that he's focused on, which is why it wasn't surprising to me to talk about self-inflicted wounds, because he has prepared his team to really focus on the fundamentals of the game, to focus on the basics, and to really lean into and be proud of their defensive discipline. Those are the things that he's already showing in practice. And so he doesn't have women's hockey experience, and I think he could be a coach to really watch and see what he can do with this expansion team in the Seattle Torrent.
Yes, I do agree with that. And then the other coach, that's a guy that's behind the New York Sirens bench. He took over in season 2. So now he's in season 2 of his own coaching career with the Sirens. What are you expecting from Coach Fargo after his first year? Like, what are you expecting
Yeah,
to
and
continue with the Sirens?
well, and that's the thing. I think that there has to be a departure of some of what we saw in season one. That was a season where, again, I think the New York team was kind of still learning their players. They had a lot of really great players, but it didn't seem like there was, enough of an understanding of how the players worked and played together. With Coach Fargo, this is his, second full season. I do think that Pascal Daou, again, made a lot of moves during the draft. And I've had questions, quite honestly, and I've been critical before about the New York Sirens and how they were building their team. More so last year, again, there were kind of some disparate pieces that just weren't really adding up. When you have Abby Rock, Alex Carpenter, I already mentioned Zandi Hart, Ella Shelton, and you still are having difficulty winning games. That seemed like that there just was maybe not the right mix, either not the right mix of players or not utilizing the players in the right way, maybe both. So seeing some of the changes now, going for some younger talent, I am hopeful that for Fargo's sake, that he and Pascal Daou have been able to work together to come up with, systems, true systems that are going to feed the vision of Fargo, but also that he's been able to build up, a roster that makes sense as far as trying to execute that. And so again, Taylor Gerard is someone that I've been looking at. Obviously you have, Culty, who comes to the team, who's an international talent, Casey O'Brien, the team, there's definitely some, again, young talent on this team. It's just a matter of how well are they going to be able to play their systems? Do they have enough on the back end? But again, you have Zandi Hart, you have Jinsey Rose, who's coming off of injury. You have Jamie Bourbonnais. These are all really great names defensively. It might take a little time. For them to come together. Very young in net, so all the more reason that they have to be super sharp defensively, and not just from the blue line, but through all three zones.
Indeed. And you talked about Zandi Hart, and we found out before the Sirens' second game of the year, which was against Montreal, and they obviously lost that one in a shutout fashion, but they did beat Ottawa. We found out that Zandi Hart, before that game against Montreal, was fined $250 for disciplinary action. What did you see on the hit from Zandi Hart?
I am not always great, especially that now that they've changed the ruling when it comes to hits here. I think you trust what the officials say there. Zandi Hart, for me, is not a dirty player. So sometimes you get caught up in situations where you have to make a play and things of that nature. But, it was a major penalty, a game misconduct for cross-checking. Cross-checking, I think, throughout hockey is something that people are taking very serious because of the potential for injuries. I think there's a few things at play here. You look at the player, Zandi Hart doesn't have a reputation of that. You look at the hit itself, you have to see, if that was, the smart play as far as, again, thinking about injury there. And then, there's a lot of other things to weigh here, but I think that it's unfortunate for New York to lose their captain. That's for sure, especially because one of the things I did say is that they'll have to be defensively sound because they're such a young team. That's a lot of times when you're building a team, putting a team together where you want to start, but to lose your captain to a suspension is tough.
Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8:00 p.m. and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait. I made it. Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Hi, Scott. It's Ali here. I just wanted to mention that I'm really enjoying the show and I'm really enjoying what you're putting together. And I wanted to just say I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. So please keep up the phenomenal work and make sure you guys keep this podcast going because it really suits you well.
Hey everyone, it's Scott McGregor here. Join me weekly right here on Sports for Beginners for weekly episodes, your weekly dive in around sports news surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays, Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Raptors, and more. We'll have guests on a week-to-week basis and so much more. Lots of great conversations coming. Be sure to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And with that, make sure to like our Facebook page, Sports for Beginners Podcast 87. Just type that into your browser and you should be sure to find our Facebook page. We'll also provide bonus content. It's going to be a dull moment you'll never want to miss. Check out Sports for Beginners with me weekly for daily news around the sports league, surrounding my favorite sports teams and yours, and so much more. Until then, we'll see you at action time.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Thank you so much to Erica for joining us here on the podcast. Our interview was cut after Erica was running with us. So we thank you so much for Erica joining us. If you may not have heard, Erica is no longer with the Locked On Podcast Network. All of her content is currently now running on her other company that she runs called Black Rosie Media. This also means that she is no longer running Locked On Kraken, as well as the Women's Hockey Report. If Erica is able to join us again, we will continue on. But there was a lot that she mentioned in our interview, our first part of the interview. So again, Erica, sorry about that. The Zoom meeting kicked us out during recording, but you did finish your thoughts. So thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate your time.
So with Zandi Hart, I think, in that game against Ottawa, what we see is that there's just a lot of frustration bubbling over. It wasn't even like, if I understand correctly, like there were some things that were happening. There was the goal that was overturned, and Zandi Hart looked like she was, defending one of her teammates that got hit pretty hard into the boards. And because that then escalated, her actions after that hit escalated. That's kind of why you get what you get there. It's tough because, per the rules, of course, you have to think at least, penalty, misconduct, and thus suspension is on the board there. And I think true hockey players are probably going to side with Zandi Hart. You kind of take the licks as they come because you have to stand up for your teammate. It was a pretty hard hit into the boards. I don't remember who went into the boards, but it was Hughes, right, who laid that hit. And then Hughes and Zandi Hart get into it. The two teams kind of scuffle a little. So New York is also, they also had some beef with Montreal. So I think they're getting a little bit of a reputation here early in the season.
I agree. I agree. All right, to close things out here, as we already mentioned off the top, and I brought it up when we returned from the break that we took during our interview. Erica, first of all, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate your time. And
Yep.
also, do hope we can do this a couple more times over the course of the PWHL season, even if it's bonus or season episode. Hopefully, we can do these more than once. Obviously, this is our second time doing it, and also really grateful, like I said, of your time. And it's been a good start to the season. We're off to a good start. We have a jailbreak goal. We have a hat trick in night one for the Sirens for Taylor Gerard. We also had that disciplinary action on Micah Zandi Hart. And we also had Toronto play spoiler against Minnesota. We also had Montreal beat New York. Boston also able to beat Montreal in their home opener. Of course, Montreal won their home opener against New York. Boston won their home opener against Montreal, but still lots more to come, including we got the Torrent home opener as we are talking. That should be going down tonight between, oh, sorry, that is Friday against Minnesota. Tonight it is Ottawa playing game two at home against the Vancouver Golden Eyes. And then basically after the Torrent opener, you got the Sirens, who we've talked about now with one win and one loss as we speak. And you've got their home opener coming up this weekend. You also got Toronto's home opener coming up this weekend. And then I think pretty much that's it. Ottawa's had their home opener. Vancouver's had their home opener. Minnesota's had their home opener. Boston and Montreal, they both had their home opener. So yeah, I think you got to go to Seattle and New York and then Toronto, and then that's it for home openers.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's going to be exciting. And again, it's an Olympic year, so that will change what the PWHL looks like a little bit. And I look forward to on the other side of the Olympics, perhaps, circling back and getting ready for the playoffs.
Yes, and I do want to mention on the topic of the expansion, I forgot to mention that. So Amy mentioned in her commentary, she mentioned that if she was a betting woman, they would expand to 4 teams, but the plan next season is to expand again. Whether it's 4 teams, 2 teams next season joining the fold, we don't know yet. But Amy mentioned if she was a betting man, or sorry, a betting woman rather, to the exact, it would be 4 teams, which would enably bring the PWHL from 8 teams, which it is as of this season, and of course 6 teams, which was for the first 2 seasons. That would bring it to 12 teams. Do you have any thoughts on potential expansion areas? Because we don't know who the
Yeah,
teams are going to be next
yeah,
season. We do know they are planning on expanding.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, honestly, and I'm not sure it's necessarily in a good way that the league is doing these expansions. You have 2 expansion teams that just entered now. And if you have anywhere from 2, but especially 4 more that enter next year, that means that once again, there's going to be so much turnover on these rosters. It just begs the question for me, if we have so much expansion early on, why didn't we start with more teams? Some of the conversation that we heard when this league started was that, oh, well, there's maybe not enough talent that's ready-made for elite level women's hockey. I never subscribed to that. And I don't know if the PWHL does anymore either, because if you're expanding, obviously you need top tier talent to fill those roles. So I think it's a little bit interesting, like I said, and it's maybe also disruptive because all of the teams are less than 3 years old. So that's going to be curious to see how the league and the rosters look when the next expansion comes. As far as cities, I was doing some sleuthing, and before I did exit the women's hockey report, I reported over the summer that the PWHL was making it looked like they were perhaps scouting Chicago. We see Chicago is on the takeover tour twice. I believe Detroit is on the takeover tour twice. Edmonton, I think a lot of people were surprised that Quebec City, especially those people from Quebec City, were surprised they didn't get an expansion team in the first go round. I would love to see Pittsburgh, where they fall when it comes to things like that. But my first curiosity is this sustainable? Is it the right move? Not because of a talent issue, but because, again, what you're going to have is just this start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And it's hard to get consistency, and building team chemistry is huge. But on the other side, if the funding is there, if I think, again, the talent is good, the interest in women's hockey is there, and the PWHL has certainly helped accelerate that in a lot of ways, I think it's going to be exciting either way, but it comes with its challenges for sure.
It definitely does. It definitely does. All right. Vancouver and Ottawa tonight at the time of our recording. And of course, we have Seattle, Minnesota, Vancouver once again back in action. They will take on the Sirens this weekend. And this week we'll also see Toronto and Boston. And then that's it for November hockey. We got December fast approaching. So December hockey in the PWHL is coming up momentarily. But first, we got to get through the home openers. And on the slate, we have Seattle, New York, and Toronto left. As I mentioned earlier, Minnesota, Vancouver, Ottawa, Boston, and Montreal have all had their home openers as we speak. So 30 games this year. If the league does expand, which they plan to, I honestly think it would be essential to just do 2 more rather than 4 more, because as you mentioned earlier, it's going to be more of the start, stop, start, stop, start, stop motion.
Yeah, it could potentially be disruptive. And I guess the maybe the real question is, well, when will the expansion stop? Is it going to be something that we then just expect every year for the next however many years? Like, are we looking to get to 32 teams? Are they looking to get to 22 teams? I don't know. I don't know what the goal is there, but it's definitely going to be jarring for the players, and I'm sure for the fans, especially those who want to buy jerseys with their favorite player's name on the back.
That's the part of sports that I just am like, well, at this point, why don't you just buy the jersey? And if your favorite player is not on the jersey, just get the no-name one, because that way, at least you're a fan of said team, and then you can figure out where your player is going.
I guess it depends, though. But if you're more of a fan of a player and they keep moving, then how many jerseys are you going to tap out at? So I can see it both ways for sure. If you know you're from a certain area, you're going to be a fan of that team no matter what, go for it. Absolutely. Why not? And even if you get a jersey with your player's name on it, all right, well, they used to play there, so there's that. But I think what we're seeing, this is a trend that we see in sports. I think it also is a unique trend in some ways in women's sports because of the historical lack of coverage and lack of storytelling. Once people find their favorite player and they get to know their favorite player, that's usually who they follow. They have more affinity and loyalty to players sometimes, or even specific franchises, than the league overall, or at least that's data that we see with the WNBA. Now, the PWHL is single ownership, so we'd have to dive into the trends there a little bit more as far as team affiliation over league affiliation. But again, I think the loyalties for sure lie with the players.
Yes, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. I couldn't agree with you more because, I mean, even with expansion with the PWHL, like you saw what that did to Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, New York, Minnesota, Boston, when Seattle and Vancouver were coming into the mix for the expansion draft. So now they've been through this. Seattle and Vancouver were the first go at this. So if this does indeed happen where it is 2 or 4 teams, this is going to be the first kick of the can for Vancouver and Seattle to try to protect their players, because that's what Minnesota, New York, Ottawa, Boston, Montreal, and Toronto had to do when Seattle and Vancouver were coming into the fray.
Yeah, I think another question is, did general managers of all of the teams, but to your point, perhaps specifically the expansion teams, when they were coming up with contracts, including some multi-year contracts, did they know that expansion was inevitable in the next season? Because maybe, I'm not saying for sure, but it definitely is a consideration of, how many multi-year contracts you give, knowing that you might not be able to execute those. How does it affect the salary structure as far as players? Are they more willing to sign multi-year contracts in the hopes that they do get protected, or maybe they want to sign one-year contracts if they know more expansion is on the horizon, so that they can be, even if they aren't selected in expansion, more of a free agent and see if the money pot, so to speak, is a little bit more lucrative elsewhere. So I think that there are other considerations when it comes to expansion. And again, is this a player friendly? Is it a team friendly? Or is it more of a league friendly thing? But again, can we have that same conversation, because this is a single entity ownership? But I think either way, again, it does impact the players, and it will certainly impact the fans and the fan base.
It definitely will. It definitely will. And with that, I think that'll do it for us right now. Thank you so much, Erica, for coming on. Would love to connect with you over the course of after the Olympic break, and of course, over the course of this PWHL season. And fans who love the PWHL, make sure you check out PWHL Recap on my brother's podcast, On the Ice and Behind the Benches, as well as on this podcast, Sports for Beginners. We will have shows for you after select games. To remind you, I am doing Boston and Toronto this weekend. I will also do a Battle of Ontario, but perhaps that comes after a little expansion action with one of the other teams. But we will see. Thank you so much, Erica, for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And yes, and with that being said, I would love to be featured on Black Rosie Media at some point, but just before I let you go, as we mentioned over the course of the show, even at the beginning of the show, we clarified that Erica is not with Locked On anymore. She is, however, doing Black Rosie Media stuff, so everything that she was doing for Locked On, she is continuing to do with Black Rosie Media instead of Locked On. She is not hosting Locked On Kraken anymore, and she is not with Rachel working on the women's hockey report. However, as she mentioned, all of her content is exclusively available on Black Rosie Media.
Yes.
And with that said, Erica, where can the great people find you now, besides Locked On?
Well, no longer at Locked On, as we just established again, not with Locked On, the Locked On Podcast Network. It was a great run. Very honored to be the first ever host of both the Women's Hockey Report and Locked On Kraken. And so we'll see what the network does with those shows. But you can find me at elindsay08 on Blue Sky. You can also find me at elindsay08 on Instagram. And Black Rosie Media, you can follow our YouTube channel, subscribe there. 206 Sports Collective is where we'll talk Seattle sports, including, of course, the Kraken, the Torrent, and right now the Seattle Storm. We'll have some other teams that are. We also have a show called Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, if you like the WNBA. And for women's basketball, speaking of women's basketball coverage, I am still a contributor over at CBS Sports Network. So you can find me writing things at cbssports.com, also on CBS Sports HQ, talking women's basketball, sometimes some hockey and other things, but mostly basketball. And when it comes to the Olympics, you're going to want to stay tuned on Black Rosie Media, because we are accredited for Milano Cortina. We'll be covering the women's and men's ice hockey tournaments, and my writing can be found on Olympics.com. During that time, I will also be working with the Olympic team there to give you coverage of the hockey tournaments.
Yes, and you can find all of that at Black Rosie Media as well. And also, you could find me on Instagram at SMC_87_. That is a personal account that I have right now. I guess you could call it a podcast account now, but I'm also on Facebook. I do have a Facebook page. All you have to do, if you're on Facebook at the time you're listening to this, go into your browser, type Sports for Beginners, and you should be able to find the Facebook page. We do have a WhatsApp group chat, and we are also on Discord. Links will be provided in the description of this episode as well, of this conversation as well. This conversation will also be, both parts of it will also be available in short on YouTube when we have time to do so. We will also include a link to the first time we talked to Erica on our podcast. That was her season debut on our show as a guest. Perhaps Erica will have some PWHL, some Seattle Kraken, or some WNBA talk next time we chat, because I'm really looking forward to 2026 when it comes to the WNBA, because the Toronto Tempo are going to be in their inaugural season. So
That's right.
maybe Black Rosie Media and Sports for Beginners are going to collide for a little women basketball talk. I don't know how much I'll be paying attention to basketball games, but I will see what I can pick up.
I think you should definitely tap in a time or two, especially since the Toronto Tempo, that was a lot of alliteration, since the Toronto Tempo hired Sandy Brondello, the two-time WNBA champion and Aussie Olympian, both as a player and coach. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. If you are a fan of Canadian sports and Toronto specifically, you're definitely going to want to see what the Toronto Temple can do in their inaugural season. We got to figure out who's going to be on the roster. I think that there's going to be some Canadians, maybe Bridget Carlton. I think Kia Nurse is a draw that we might see come back home now that we finally have women's basketball headed to the north.
Yeah, so that's just a teaser there, not a spoiler, but a teaser of what you could probably expect between Black Rosie Media and Sports for Beginners. Thank you
Love it.
so much for Erica for joining us. Would love to have you back on the show. WNBA, Seattle Kraken, Pittsburgh and Seattle, we'll do that. Talk about the women's hockey as well, but WNBA definitely could be in the conversation. Again, Toronto Tempo inaugural season begins in 2026, as does the next WNBA season. They always start, from what I understand, they always start in May. So something to keep in mind. Perhaps we will have WNBA conversations at the start of our next season of Sports for Beginners. All right, Erica, this has been great fun. Looking forward to doing it again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. And we look forward to whenever we have Erica back, guys and girls back, to join us for the conversation. Send an email to sportsforbeginners podcast8231@gmail.com. Or if you want to get in contact with Erica, remember, as I mentioned and as we established, she is no longer with the Locked On Podcast Network. So one of the easier ways to get in touch with her is on her social platforms, as she mentioned, or you can simply send an email to hello@BlackRosieMedia for anything you fancy. WNBA, PWHL, Seattle Kraken, Seattle Torrent, Seattle Storm, all that jazz. New York Liberty. There's a lot to unpack. That'll do it for this interview. Thank you so much for being with us. We will talk to you again real soon. And I want to issue a big thank you to Erica Lindsay Ayala of Black Rosie Media. She is the founder of Black Rosie Media. She was the first ever host of Locked On Kraken, the daily centric podcast for the Seattle Kraken. We'll wait and see what the situation with Locked On Kraken is as to who will be the next host of Locked On Kraken. But Erica still does stuff for the Kraken. She will have it all exclusively on Black Rosie Media. She also covers the WNBA's New York Liberty, the Seattle Torrent for the PWHL, and many other areas. And as you have heard, I should say, on the interview I did with her, Black Rosie Media will be heading back to the Olympics, and she's very excited about that. As I mentioned, that is going to be taking place in February and is the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games in February of 2026. Now, both the PWHL and the NHL will be off during this time for a 2-week break. And with all that being said, I cannot wait to see where it goes. I really can't. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's round out episode 30 of season 4 with a look here as we continue on our PWHL kickoff, following our featured interview with Erica Lindsay Ayala. Thank you so much, Erica, for joining us. I really appreciate your time for the time we had you and look forward to our next conversation. As we speak, the Boston Fleet are undefeated with 3 games played and 27 games left on the schedule. Minnesota, Seattle, also with 27 games left. They've played 3 games. Boston is undefeated with 3 wins, no losses, no overtime wins or losses, no shootout losses as well. If right behind them are the Toronto Scepters, who have 1 overtime loss and 2 wins. We'll talk more about that on PWHL recap charge and Scepters as to how that happened. But as we sit here, it is 2-1 and 0-0 for Toronto, going by win, loss, overtime, wins, and losses. Minnesota is in the number 3 spot, same record as Toronto. 2 wins, 1 loss, no overtime wins or losses. In number 4, with 2 wins and 2 losses, we have the New York Sirens, who have played 4 games and are down to 26 games, as are the Vancouver Golden Eyes and the Ottawa Charge. Ottawa with 3 losses and 1 win under their belt. Montreal, the only team yet to play games 20 and 26, 1 win under their belt and 1 loss under their belt. Vancouver, an overtime win and 3 losses, no wins in regulation and no overtime losses. Ottawa with a record 1-3. Vancouver record 1-3. Montreal record 1-1. Seattle with a record of 1-1-1, as they have won a game. They beat New York. For their first win at home at Climate Pledge Arena. They also have a loss in overtime that came in the opener against Vancouver, and they also have a regulation loss. They, like Minnesota, Toronto, and Boston, have played 27 games. New York, Ottawa, and Vancouver each have played 26 games. 4 games. 3 games for Seattle and Boston and Toronto and Minnesota. 4 games for New York, Ottawa, and Vancouver have been played. Only 1 team has played 2 games this season. That is Montreal. Seattle, Minnesota, Toronto, and Boston, 3 games played, 27 games remaining as it relates to it. New York, Ottawa, and Vancouver with 26 games to go, playing 4 games. Montreal, the sole team, with 2 games played and 28 games to go as we roll on. All right, so let's take a look at our schedule upcoming in the league to round out the 3rd week of action in the PWHL. We have Saturday afternoon, the Vancouver Golden Eyes hosting the New York Sirens. Then on Sunday, doubleheader action. Toronto taking on Montreal from Place Bell in Laval. Place Bell in Laval. That's at 12 Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific. At 3 Eastern, 2 Central, 12 Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain. We got Minnesota and Boston duking it out from Agganis Arena. I'm trying to make sure I say this correctly, and apologies if I don't. But that's in Boston on Sunday. Final scores so far: Ottawa lost 3-1 last night to the Toronto Scepters, who will take on the Montreal Victoire this Sunday. The New York Sirens, as they prepare for battle against the Vancouver Golden Eyes, lost 2-1 to the Seattle Torrent. First win at home and first win in franchise history for the Seattle Torrent. Boston beat Vancouver 2-0 on December 3rd as the opener of that Wednesday doubleheader. And Minnesota beat Ottawa 5-1 at TD Place. So Ottawa has lost twice this week so far. They'll kick off the week of December 16th to December 21st, 2025, when they battle the Vancouver Golden Eyes from the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver. And with that, that'll do it here for episode 30 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Next time on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, how did Crosby and the Penguins fare against Nikita Kucherov and the Tampa Bay Lightning. What else was happening around the NHL? It's a Penguins post-game edition on season 4 of Sports for Beginners next time as we talk Penguins and Lightning. Then next week, PWHL Kickoff continues as we recap the week so far from Tuesday, December 16th, all the way to the end of the week, Sunday, December 21st, 2025, during which time we will also wrap up season 4 with a little Christmas spectacular for you. So in total, this show will have 32 episodes in season 4, with a third installment of PWHL Kickoff to close out. But first, a game recap to get to on the Penguins side. And that's our next episode. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Even when we've had to take episodes down that have been previously recorded and posted, we really do appreciate it. All right, 2 game recaps coming up on Sports for Beginners. One for our season content, one for our continuing bonus content, and then lots more bonus content to come over the weekend. Bills, Bengals this week, Dolphins, Jets this week. I wonder how Thursday Night Football went down. Find out the answer on Bills or Dolphins post-game this week. For now, we'll catch up with you after Penguins and Lightning for episode 31 of season number 4. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and always remember, we'll see you again real soon. I am Scott McGregor signing off for Sports for Beginners, episode 11, episode 30. Keep your episodes intact, Scott. Episode 30 of season 4. I'll see you, respected fans of each league, NHL and PWHL, at the game recap. Until then, peace. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.